is a recap of my Nuzlocke of Pokemon Silver. A Nuzlocke is a self-imposed challenge that makes Pokemon games more fun and sometimes harder to play again. The basic Nuzlocke rules say that any Pokemon that faints can't be used anymore, and you can only use the first wild Pokemon that you encounter in any route. What I'm doing here is specifically an hardcore Nuzlocke. This adds a few different rules. First of all, there are level caps. I can't level my Pokemons over the level of the next gym leader. Other than that, I can't use any items in battle apart from held items. Finally, I have to play in set mode, which means I can't switch when I KO an opponent's Pokemon. Apart from this, I'm also using a duplicate clause, which means I can't catch a Pokemon I already encountered, and I will have to find a new encounter if that's my first encounter in a new route. This run is slightly different from usual Nuzlocke. I came into this wanting to play Silver and experience everything that the game had to offer. This means that other than actually completing the Nuzlocke, part of my objective is to talk with every single NPC in the game, to find pretty much all items, and to challenge all trainers. This last one, in particular, is different from a usual Nuzlocke mindset. Usually, you only fight trainers that you are forced to fight. Every extra fight is an extra risk that you don't want to take. In my case, I played against every single trainer in the game, and I also challenged them when they call you to have a new fight. Because I wanted to experience the original Silver, which I played a long time ago, I also decided to not use rare candies. Like, I didn't hack rare candies in my game, but had to level up using the trainers in the game, and if my level really wasn't enough, I had to farm with wild Pokemon. This changes things a bit, because it means that every time I lose a Pokemon, I actually lose a ton of time and a ton of experience that I will need to farm again. So every single Pokemon feels more valuable and you're more attached to it. Lastly, I know that most Nuzlockers nickname their Pokemon, but I completely suck at giving nicknames, so I just skipped that part. The result was a pretty fun Nuzlocke, with a few dangerous places where I actually risked to wipe out completely, which means I would have to restart my run. But these places were unexpected. The hardest part wasn't the Elite Four, but some random fights in the game that I really didn't expect to be so hard. With all of this said, let's start. First of all, we choose Chikorita as our starter. The reason is that I like Growlithe, and it's the first Pokemon that I used to complete a Silver run when I was a kid. And also, Silver is considered a really easy game to Nuzlocke, and Chikorita is terrible in all of the early gyms. So that should make the game a bit harder and add a bit of fun. We start our journey, and our very first fight is whoa! We had to use our berry against a random level 3 PG. I got a bit suspicious and I went to check my Chikorita's DVs, and it has 0 attack DV. That, that kind of explains the terrible results with that PG. Anyway, the travel to Professor Oak is smooth, and we get back. We easily beat our rival because we are one level above him. We get back to the lab and we finally get our Pokeballs. Now we can start getting encounters and catching Pokemon. Our very first encounter is a centered on Route 29 and we get it. After that, we go to Route 46 and we find a Jigglypuff, which is actually a nice encounter, but it just refused to get into a Pokeball, so we exhausted all of our Pokeballs and we couldn't get it. Our first failed capture of the run. It's a shame, but that's how it goes sometimes. We move on to Route 30 and we get a Pidgey. We level up a bit and we start moving up towards Violet City by fighting the first few trainers and the famous youngster Joy. On Route 31, we get a Weedle, the newest member of our team, and we finally get to the city. Since we got Weedle on Route 31, it means that we couldn't get Bellsprout, and we couldn't exchange Bellsprout for Onyx in Violet City. Because of this, we don't have a rock type for the Flying Gym, but luckily, when we backtrack to Dark Cave, we get the Geodude, which will be great not only for the first gym, but for the second and also for the third one. After this, we go to Sprout's Tower and we just destroy all the Bellsprout using our Weedle. And then we encounter a Rattata and catch it. We could only catch a Rattata because it was a day in the game and Ghastly only appears at night. And in the moment, this didn't seem so bad, but lacking a ghost type turned out to be a really big problem later. Anyway, we get to the top, and our Geodude easily beats the overleveled Hoothoot. But the problem is that it gets a bit too close to level 10, and I prefer not to bring it into battle against the trainers in the gym before the team leader, because if it gets to level 10, I won't be able to use it in the gym battle, and I don't think I can win without my Geodude. The fight against the level 9 Spearow of the gym trainer turns out to be harder than I thought because of the lack of Geodude, and I'm actually forced to sack my Rattata that I just got. It's the first sack of the run, and good job Rattata, I guess, even though it was a short acquaintance. We get to Falkner, and the battle starts. His first Pokemon is Pidgey, which is supposed to be really easy, but somehow my Sentret is still weaker than his Pidgey, so Kakuna has to come in and help. Afterwards, there is the Pidgeotto. This is a menace. Not only is it a level 9 evolved Pokemon, but it also had Mudslap that with its accuracy drop can just kill you with RNG. I seriously hate accuracy drops. My Geodude comes in, and Geodude is supposed to be a complete counter to Pidgeotto, but somehow it loses the 1v1. The accuracy drops just destroy Geodude, and at level 9 it still doesn't have any rock-type moves. Unlike the Pidgeotto in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, this Pidgeotto is a total menace. Pidgey has to come in, and it manages to land a sand attack. Their energy turns in my favor, and the Pidgeotto starts missing everything, and Pidgey comes clutch and beats it. It was pretty dangerous, but somehow it worked. With the first gym badge in the bag, we go back to the Pokemon Center, and we get the Togepi egg, which I will count as my encounter for Violet City. Then we go to the Runes of Alpha, and I spend way too much time on a children puzzle, but I manage to solve it, and we get in the cave with unknowns. We do get an unknown, but where is this place? Because technically this is the Ruins of Alpha, but it is a different map inside the ruins, like a building or a cave, I think. So it should count as its own place, but for some reason my Nuzlocke tracker doesn't list it as its own place, but it doesn't even list unknown at all as an encounter. I'm not sure what's going on, but I have to say that the Nuzlocke tracker I'm using, which is like the first one you find on Google with Nuzlocke tracker, is absolute crap for silver. I already had some problems with yellow because some encounters were wrong, but with silver it's a total mess. Most of the encounters are wrong and you just can't rely on it. It's just a useful tool to know the next level cap and to keep track of what you encountered, but routing your encounters, nope, just don't use it. Anyway, I decided to count this area as its own place with its own encounter, get my own, and then move to the next route to get a Bellsprout. I mean, I would like to get a Bellsprout, but this happens. To catch this, it's my first encounter. No! I thought this was Daikol. After my oopsie with the Bellsprout, I decided that it is time to start choosing who to train, because there is just not enough experience before the next gym to train everyone to level 16. I definitely cut Sentret. I love Furret, but I don't know, this Sentret just isn't doing any damage. It barely beats a Wild Marip. Instead, I decide that I definitely want to train more my Beedrill, because at level 10 Beedrill just has so many stats. It's really strong. But the moveset is not the best, honestly. As you can see, having to rely on an 85% accurate move just doesn't cut it. I'm just unlucky, honestly. In this fight against a Polybug with 2 levels of advantage, somehow Beedrill still manages to lose. I just can't trust their energy at all. So I have to look for a better move, and I know where to find one. In Union Cave, you can find VTM for Swift, and immediately talk it to Beedrill. Now it's ready to sweep. After that, always in Union Cave, I also find an Onyx, and I managed to catch it. But it was a whole ordeal, honestly. It took 2 Grit Balls and 14 Pokeballs to catch that mon. While clearing the Slowpoke well, I also kept a Zubat, which I really wanted because I like Crobat and I thought it could be somewhat good in this game. And then, right before entering the gym, Togepi decides to come out of its egg. And now it's gym time. The trainers in the gym didn't really pose any challenge to me, but it was nice to meet a fellow Beedrill enjoyer. The only relevant fight was against the gym leader. You can see my team on the screen, and I was pretty confident because I Geodude, but I started with Beedrill. I quickly noticed that I could just set up Arden on Metapod, so I set up a few Arden. Then, after beating Metapod, my Beedrill learned Focus Energy, so I decided to set up also Focus Energy on Kakuna. And at that point, my Beedrill just completed the sweep and also beat Scyther. To be honest, the situation got a little dangerous because if Scyther had crit, or if I didn't crit with an ass attack, my Beedrill would have gone down to Scyther's attack next turn, because I couldn't switch to Geodude. Scyther's Fury Swipes had already gotten to 160 base power, so switching to Geodude was way too dangerous at that point. Even with that, it was a pretty satisfactory victory, and it wasn't really that dangerous. At most, I would have got Speedrill, which I didn't intend to use anyway in the later parts of the game. After doing that, I easily beat the rival. Geodude just beats Pilava. Then I went to Lex Forex and got a Paras. Then I got VTM for Headbutt and started headbutting trees everywhere. I decided that I wanted a Pineco and decided to challenge the stupidly made mechanic that is Headbutt trees in Pokemon Silver. And the fact that the Bulbapedia page for Headbutts had a little typo also didn't help, honestly. But in the end, I found an Execute in Azalea Town, so I was unlucky and I crit it while trying to weaken it after it escaped from many Pokeballs. And then I got a Spearow on Route 33. At this point, I was ready to move toward Golden Road City. On Route 44, I got Drowzee, and then I met this policeman that had a level 17 Growlithe. This thing just destroyed me. My team wasn't ready because the Growlithe had Bite. I didn't expect this, and in one single hit, it took more than half of my Geodude's health. At this point, I had to switch around a bit. I had to sack Togepi, and then I also lost Pidgey. The send attack strat kind of worked, and Chikorita managed to save the day, but Pidgey had to sacrifice itself for it. This is something that can easily happen when you play blind, because for most of these fights, I don't actually check my opponent's team, and this was also an optional trainer that I only fought because I wanted to fight all the trainers in the game. After mourning the loss of two more Pokemon, I went to get the bike, and then I trained a bit with wild Pokemon, because there just wasn't enough experience, and went to fight Claire. The fight went surprisingly smoothly. Bayleaf managed to beat Clefairy pretty easily, even though Clefairy was pretty lucky with 5 hits of double slap and a crit, and also managed to set up a Reflect, so that Miltank could not KO it with Stomp, and this way Bayleaf managed to poison Miltank before switching out to Geodude. The Reflect also helped Geodude for a bit, and Geodude managed to beat Miltank alone. I think I was really well prepared for this fight, mainly because I somewhat remembered Miltank's moveset because it is pretty famous, Stomp for flinch and roll out for, killing everyone. But it was also pretty lucky because if my magnitude were weaker, I would have had to switch out Geodude and suck something to the 50th of rollout before going back in and finishing the game. Anyway, after beating Claire, I moved on to Route 36, where I got Nidoran, and since I had been headbutting trees for a while, I finally managed to meet a Pineco, but things went a little differently from what I had in my head.
Yes, it's the one. That's so good. Yeah, I can use a Leech Life, honestly. Oh,
Yeah, I just didn't remember at all that Pineco is like the only mon that learns self-destruct before level 10. I had absolutely no idea. I lost an encounter, I lost my Zubat, which I really wanted to use, and my team was now in trouble for the next fight because Zubat had Bite, which is good against ghost types. But I didn't even have time to think about Morty because immediately after the Pineco, I met the deadliest trainer in the whole game. This completely random guy with a Drowzee. I don't know how it's possible, but this was the hardest fight in the whole game. It's the point in the game where I was the closest to wiping out. In this game, Hypnosis is supposed to be a 60% accurate move, but all AI trainers have an extra 25% chance to miss applied after the 60%, which means Hypnosis is actually a 45% accurate move for my opponent. So it shouldn't be threatening. For some unknown reason, this guy has Dream Meter on his Drowzee. I don't know why they gave him a TM, but this guy hit Hypnosis so often and my Bailey stayed asleep so long that I was actually out of options to beat this Drowzee. Bailiff should have beaten it. Bad luck. Even Tackle started missing. Nothing I could do about it. My other Pokemon were useless against Drowzee. I tried sending in Geodude. I hoped that maybe I would use a magnitude 10 and one-shot it. But before Geodude could even move, he was put to sleep and he never woke up again. And Geodude was down. Afterwards, I only had poison-type Pokemon or really low-leveled Pokemon, and all I could do was send Beedrill and hope. For some unknown reason, this Drowzee just stopped throwing out Hypnosis for a while, and Beedrill just managed to win. Thinking about this later, I realized that I could have actually stalled the PP of Dream Eater by switching out a sleep Pokemon, but in the moment I just couldn't think of it and I was just so confused by what was happening. This level 17 Rosie was wiping out my team, and I didn't have a solution. This left me with a gigantic problem with Morty. I went to check Morty's team, and his team is mostly not threatening because it can't really do anything to normal type Pokemon. The problem is that my normal type Pokemon at that point couldn't really do anything back. But you may notice that his Gengar actually has Hypnosis and Dream Eater. The same combination that almost wiped me right now on a random Drowzee is on a level 25 Gengar from a gym leader, and that Gengar also has Shadow Ball. I was terrified by this. I went around catching a few Pokemon. I got Tauros on Route 39, I got Machop in Mount Mortar, and I got Marip on Route 42 before getting Magikarp in the Lake of Rage. Yes, I went through Mount Mortar by foot all the way to Lake of Rage because you can only get Magikarp there, and if I got Magikarp for somewhere else, I would just lose an encounter. After Magikarp, we continued our fishing trip by catching Poliwag in Necrotic, Krabby in Cherry Brew, then a little bit of change with Caterpie in the bug catching contest at the National Park, then Meo on Route 38, and yeah, I will say Meo, in Italian will say Meo, Staryu in Olivine, and this Staryu was seriously a surprise. I really didn't expect a shiny in a second generation game, but it was really nice. Catching Staryu itself was not as nice. This whole series of catching Pokemon was something I planned to be able to catch a Staryu, but after catching it, I discovered that they didn't put any water stones in Yoto. You can't get Starmie before beating the Elite Four, which means Staryu is practically useless and I can't use it. That's pretty sad. Anyway, let's get over this sadness. I beat the Kimono Girls to Deck Surf, and then I went to a tower to beat the rival, which was really easy, but I mean, I just noticed but isn't that lipstick? That looks really red. Whatever. After the rival, I got coughing in the Baron Tower, and at this point, only the gym leader was left. Let's take a look at his team once again. With Surf Tauros, Gastly and both Hunters are not a problem. There are some small risks, because Surf from Tauros doesn't really do much, but I developed a strategy that made that completely safe. I think it was pretty cool, but it is a bit long. The Gengar was still a problem. I had nothing that could beat it. The problem was that Hypnosis could always destroy me. I had one mint berry, which is the berry that lets you wake up. I could get more if I waited one day for it to regenerate, but I didn't really want to wait anymore. At that point, I had to choose a Pokemon that could one-shot Gengar. Luckily, I had the Dig TM, so a good ground-type Pokemon like Geodude, which died to Drowzee. So a good ground-type Pokemon like Nidoqueen, but there are no Moonstones before Morty, and anyway, in this generation, Nidoqueen doesn't learn Dig. Tauros could do it, but no, Tauros doesn't learn Dig in this generation. I was really out of options. I was starting to think that I would have to go back to Goldenrod City and actually buy Sensdrew in the casino, and then train it all the way from level 10 to level 25 to somehow use Dig to one-shot Gengar. At this point, my only choice was to look for another Pokemon. I looked into my box and I found a solution. Parasect. I had left my Paras to the Pokemon Daycare, and it was already pretty high leveled, and it evolved exactly at level 25, and Parasect actually has quite a high attack stat, which means, yeah, it couldn't one-shot, but it could definitely two-shot, and since it was an evolved Pokemon, it also had enough bulk to survive a few Dream Eaters. With a Mint Berry, the chances to win were pretty high. I had to take 2 Hypnosis. If Gengar missed even one, it was a guaranteed win for me, and it was really likely to miss one. But even in the worst case scenario, with an early wake up, I could still win because I would survive quite a few Dream Eaters. I could ensure that I was switch in on a move that was not Hypnosis, because I could just switch in after one of my other Pokemon was put to sleep with Hypnosis, or I could just suck something if I really had to. So I went with it, and the result is what you've just seen on the screen. It was pretty good. Parasect actually did something in a Nuzlocke. And Caterpie, well, Caterpie took one for the team, but a sack was necessary. After the gym, I got Ipom on Route 43, and then I went to the Lake of Rage to challenge the Red Gyarados. The Red Gyarados was a terrible encounter, simply because I was convinced that it was similar to the Snorlax in the first generation, where you encountered it and then you could just run away. I did remember that it was level 30, but I completely forgot that it had Dragon Rage, and none of the Pokemon had enough HP to take 2 Dragon Rages. That already made it an impossible fight, but I went without worrying too much, because I just thought, yeah, if it is too strong, I'll just run away. It's not a problem. But it seems you can't. You have to fight it until you either catch it or you beat it. I put the fight on the screen right now. It is pretty long, and I will talk about another interesting thing while it goes on. Why did they come to this side? Usually you would go to beat the 5th gym, then I think it's usually considered the 6th gym, the steel gym, and then you will do the ice gym after that. In Nuzlocke, because of the level caps, the ice gym is actually the 6th gym, and I wanted to do the Rocket Hideout first. Rocket Hideout is infamous in Pokemon Silver because its level is completely wrong. The trainers there have low-level Pokemon that, after doing the 5th gym, are just too easy. I started to think that maybe the developers intended for the player to go do the Rocket Hideout immediately after the 4th gym. And yeah, the levels are actually correct. But this means that the Red Gyarados is actually an incredibly hard encounter. And yeah, I think you were supposed to beat the Red Gyarados after you beat the 5th gym. Anyway, I got this incredibly hard fight where I had to switch a lot. I had to stack item, which was not a big problem. But sadly, I lost Drowzee, which is actually a big problem because not only do I want to train it, but I had already started to train it and I had already put some time and some experience into it. Sadly, even with Flash, it couldn't dodge all the attacks, but thanks to those flashes, at least my bailiff managed to win in the end. It was really, really risky. I could have wiped, I think, if there was a serious risk of wiping. Anyway, after beating the red Gyarados, I went to restock on Pokemon. I got Psyduck on Route 35, which could more or less fill the same role as Drowzee, and then I immediately lost it in the Rocket Hideout because I was too anxious to level it up because I felt like I was going too slowly, and I took unnecessary risks and Psyduck went down. Afterwards, I went to the Ruins of Alph for a new Psychic type in Natu, but I found Smeargle and I did not even bother to catch it. I refused to use my time to learn moves via sketch. After that, it was Tentacool on Route 40, and then Shelder in New Barktown. Last but not least, there was Chinchou on Route 27, and Chinchou is the one that I actually decided to train, because Lanturn is pretty cool, it is a Generation 2 Pokemon, it just felt good to train a Lanturn. I went back to the Rocket Hideout, and my experience in the Rocket Hideout can be summarized by my encounter with this Voltorb. Look at it. So nice. It would be an easy catch if it didn't fucking explode in my face. All of the difficulty in the Rocket Hideout comes from the explosions. In the second generation, both self-destruct and explosion halve the opponent's defense. This pretty much means that self-destruct is a 400 base power move and explosion is a 500 base power move. In the Rocket Hideout, there are several Pokemon that have self-destruct. First of all, there are the explosive traps on the floor that, yeah, you could just dodge. The problem is, while coming up from the stairs, you are just near the traps, and somehow I made a mistake in the movements 2 times in a row and went 2 times into those traps. And I also had to enter in there to get the Voltorb encounter. Afterward, there was a trainer with a coughing, and actually, he had two coughings. I managed to beat the first one in such a way that Tauros could survive a self-destruct if he was hit, but not a crit. Like, I managed to play around the self-destruct a bit, but I never managed to play around self-destruct crits. I was just lucky enough that I never got crit. But even so, this trainer with two coughings still beat my Felder because I had stuck it, because otherwise my Tauros would have gone to that self-destruct. Later, you beat the admin, who, by the way, has a coughing with self-destruct, and then you have a gauntlet on your hands, because after beating the admin, while you are trying to exit the hideout, you meet the other admin, and you start to fight that one admin, and yeah, he doesn't have self-destruct, but it is a second battle in a row. And then, right after that, Lance brings you to defuse the electrodes. And that's the actual hardest part. Because your Pokemon are already all damaged, and the electrodes are really fast and have enough HP to survive most hits. So it's very, very, very likely that they will explode in your face. And you have to deal with three at the same time. And since I didn't find any gauntlets before this one in silver, I thought there wouldn't be anything like this, and I was low on healing items, and yeah, I almost lost some Pokemon. I mean, at the end, I had to suck my poor Sentret, but apart from that, the others survived, but was really, really, really lucky. I think if you come into the Rocket Hideout when you are overleveled, you don't really have these problems because you will one-shot stuff. But as I said, this is not a Nuzlocke done in the most efficient way possible, but it is something meant to also experience the game. After the Rocket Hideout, I directly went to the fifth gym and battled the gym leader with a foolproof plan. I didn't actually check the team for the fifth gym leader on Bulbapedia. I only did that for the fourth one because I knew that it would be particularly difficult, but I did have a rough idea of what he had. He had Dynamic Punch, which always confuses you. His Poliwrath also had Mind Reader to make sure Dynamic Punch actually hit, and he had Surf. With that, I was really confident in my plan. I also had the Bitter Berries to cure the confusion, and I went in the fight completely sure that I would win without losing even a Pokemon and maybe without even losing HP. My expectations were wrong. Very, very wrong. I beat the Primeape really easily, but then when the Poliwrath came out, I got hit by Hypnosis. And I don't know, Hypnosis is just my weak point in this game. It seems like my opponents always hit me with Hypnosis, and I don't know, I never hit that thing instead. Not only Hypnosis, I also got so unlucky that I got it 2 times by Dynamic Punch, and both times it was a crit. That combined with the sleep just destroyed my team, and I ended up losing my Bailiff. That was a problem, but I also ended up losing my Paras, and I was left without a single Grass type. I think this was my unluckiest fight in the whole game, and I really don't think that my preparations were lacking, but RNG can always mess with you. After this, I got my Shackle, and I went to beat the 7th gym. The 7th gym is the Ice Gym, and it is only one level higher than the 5th gym, so you don't really need to train much in between. I just had to prepare a bit because I didn't want to lose some Pokemon to bad luck, and Piloswine's types, Ground and Ice, are actually really hard to switch into. The fight with Pryce ended up going pretty smoothly. Lanturn easily took care of Seal. Then I had to scout the Piloswine for a ground move, and I did that by sacking an unknown. That unknown was brought in 3 different fights with intention of sacking, and it was never sacked until now. That was incredible. And then Tauros just did the rest pretty easily with strength. After beating Bryce, I moved to the Weird Islands because I wanted to catch a seal. But on the road, I just so happened to meet a shiny tentacle, and I couldn't let it go, honestly, so I decided to catch it, and I just subbed it in for my not shiny tentacle. Afterwards, I did catch a seal in the Weird Islands, and then after seal, I went to the 6th gym, Jasmine, which I'm actually doing as the 7th gym, and it was extremely easy, maybe the easiest gym. I easily beat Fish Magnemite using Nidoqueen's Mudslap, and then Mudslap wasn't enough to beat Felix, but Water type attacks easily took care of that. I proceeded towards Blackthorn City. I went on Route 44 and started headbutting trees again, and got the last Pokemon that I didn't get from the trees, which was Heracross. I really wanted the Heracross, but after escaping from 3 Pokeballs, it just ran away, and another wasted encounter. In the Ice Path, I got the usual Swinub, and then I also went to Route 45 with intention of getting a Guaranteed Skarmory. It's pretty easy to get a Guaranteed Skarmory, you just have to go in there with a Repel and a level 27 Pokemon. I went in, and I forgot to use the Repel, so I ended up with a Fampi, which is okay, but we already had Nidoqueen, so not that good. After stocking up on Pokemon, it was time for the Radio Tower. The radio tower had pretty much the same problems as the Rocket Hideout. The levels were low, but there were a ton of Pokemon that just exploded. It was particularly troublesome because my physical attackers like Tauros couldn't one-shot the Koffings, and my special attackers weren't really glass cannons that can one-shot the enemies. They were more like tanky Pokemons that, yeah, could survive one self-destruct, but they couldn't survive a crit. I was lucky, I didn't get crit, and man, this rocket admin at the top of the tower had 6 Pokemon with self-destruct and one Weezing with explosion that was ridiculous, man. The Weezing was particularly dangerous, but I had my Shackle. Shackle was actually extremely useful here because it resists normal and has a ton of defense. It couldn't actually have survived a critical hit, but it was still a low-level Pokemon that could survive a non-critical hit that wasn't too precious because I don't train it much yet. It got experience faster because it was traded, and it had repeat, which means I could lock the Weezing into other moves like Sludge or Smokescreen. It was just the best mon against explosions. Well, second best. If I had a ghost type like Ghastly, this section of the game would have been ridiculously easy. But getting a Ghastly in Silver is pretty hard, and I don't think many Nuzlockers have a Ghastly. While beating the Rockets, I also beat the Lipstick guy, and it was really easy because this poor guy still has Aquilava, and his best move is still Flame Wheel. And yeah, that's bad, but the rival with Praligator is even worse. this Relegator gets stuck with Water Gun forever. Relegator doesn't learn a better water move before you stop fighting the rival, so you can meet level 45 Alligator with Water Gun. Oh my god, so scary. While beating the rockets, there was also this section with the switches, where you had to touch some switches to open the way. And opening the way was easy, but reaching some hidden objects was incredibly hard. I had to search for the sequence on Wikipedia, and it was stupidly long, and I don't think there were any hints to get to the answer on your own. This just feels like a shield to sell guides, because, you know, when Silver came out, they had physical guides, and it seems this was made just for the purpose of selling a guide if you want to get the specific item. Around here, I also got the amulet coin, which is really useful because I had to farm a bit of money to buy some TMs in the casino because I wanted Thunder for Claire. After finishing the rockets, I went to beat Claire, and as you can see, my team is slightly under-leveled, but I was pretty confident because my Pokemon with a few clever switches could 1v1 the Dragonairs easily. And for Kingdra, Lanturn was easily enough because it has a lot of special defense, still a good defense, a lot of HP, and Rain Dance with Thunder, which is an easy win. By the way, some good fights like Morty or the fight against Chuck or my Beedrill missing a ton of times against a Poliwag, I made them into clips and they're on my channel. If you're interested, you can go and check it out. So after Claire, I went to the Dragon's Den. I found the Dratini, and it just managed to escape from a ton of balls and then it ran away. Nothing I could do here. Then I started making my way towards the Pokemon League, and I met this random trainer, and this was a mistake on my part here, because I was beating some easy trainers, I was on autopilot, I wasn't really thinking, I got hit by this Screech by Magneton, I completely forgot, I stayed in, and this Quagsire just destroyed me. But it's not something weird. This is Quagsire's moveset in the second generation. As you can see, it only learns Earthquake at level 35, but this was level 31. It doesn't make any sense. I don't know why they tried an Earthquake. It must have been a TM, I guess, because the only other way you can get it is by delaying the evolution with Wooper. But I don't think they ever did that for trainer Pokemons. But they don't even really give TMs to cool trainers, so I'm extremely confused how that Quagsire had an Earthquake. Was that a mistake on the developer's part? Was that seriously, hey, this Quagsire is a bit too weak, let's give it Earthquake? I don't know, but I just got on in by that. And while we're talking about Quagsire, why is it that Quagsire learns Sludge Bomb in second generation and Nidoqueen does not? Like, one is a poison type, the other isn't. Shouldn't it be the opposite? After losing Nidoqueen, we went on to catch a Ponyta on Route 26 using the Master Ball. Then we went to Victory Road and we easily beat the rival, even though we had a bit of a weird situation where I had to PP stall the Magneton using Tauros because that looked like the optimal thing to do in that situation. And then it was just farming for way too many hours on Victory Road because I was just under-leveled for the Elite Four. Quite interesting, any Pokemon that learns Surf, like Water types, but also Tauros, is just better because that means it can farm in Victory Road, while my Ponyta had to farm in another zone because it couldn't beat the rock types. While farming, I got a Sandrio in the Goldenrod City Casino because I needed something with a lot of defense to switch into Bruno's fighting type attacks. And then I found a Ryon in Victory Road. At this point, I was ready for the league. Well, more or less, because I was still slightly under-leveled, but I was just too tired of farming. Before entering the league, I give my Pokemon their items, and here the first mistake occurs. While giving a bitter berry to my Lanturn, so that it could shrug off the confusion, there is a problem. My item pocket is full. I have more than one bitter berry, and the item that Lanturn holds at that moment is not already in my item pocket. Because of that, giving the bitter berry to Lanturn would add one new item to my item pocket, so the action is impossible, but I don't notice it. Even though I got a warning for that, I didn't read it, and I thought I had given my Lanturn a bitter berry. So when the first Elite Four fight starts, I take more damage than necessary against the first Xatu. Then Executor comes in, but Dugong easily comes in and one-shots Executor with Ice Beam. Ice Beam is really great, and Dugong is great because it learns Ice Beam. There is no Ice Beam TM in these games, and unlike in Crystal, there is no move tutor that teaches Ice Beam, Flamethrower, and Thunderbolt, so naturally learning Ice Beam by level up is a great characteristic to have. Next Pokemon is Jinx, but Tauros easily one-shots that. Then Slowbro comes in. Usually I should have done this with Lanturn, but because it took too much damage, it couldn't switch in. But Tauros also beats Slowbro. The last Pokemon is Xatu, and Dugong easily takes care of that. It was a completely safe fight and a really easy one. For Koga, Tauros one-shots both Ariados and Venomoth. Rapidash comes in on Fortress because Fortress can explode, and honestly, it's not a big loss if I lose Rapidash on that. Fortress doesn't explode, Rapidash uses Ember and doesn't even one-shot. Rapidash movesets really sucks. Its best fire type move is Ember until it learns Fire Blast at a really high level, and there is no Flamethrower TM. So yeah, terrible. Anyway, after Rapidash beats Fortress, Sandslash easily takes care of Mach, and then Lanturn beats Crobat because using Thunder in the Rain ignores the evasion boost. It was another completely safe fight. Bruno is usually considered a joke, but for my team it's actually pretty hard. I get really lucky and it is a flawless victory. Sandslash one-shots Hitmontop with a crit, and I have to say that the crit didn't matter because even if it survived, it would have used Dig and it would have gone down the next turn. Then Sandslash one-shots Hitmonchan with another crit, and this one did matter. Then Sandslash outspeeds both Hitmonchan and Onyx and one-shots both of them really easily. And then against Machamp, Machamp misses the cross chop and goes down. Sandslash took care of the full fight without losing a single HP. If I didn't crit and Machamp didn't miss, I guess there could have been some scenarios that were pretty dangerous, like multiple crit hits, but it was an overall pretty safe fight. Then we move on to Karen. Tauros easily takes care of Umbreon. Then I don't really have anything specific for Vileplume, so it's time for Shackle. Shackle is a good addition to the team because while it doesn't really do that much usually, when you come across a Pokemon that you don't know how to beat, Shackle can usually do it. In this case, the residual damage from Sandstorm and Wrap is enough. Coincidentally, Sandstorm reduces the healing from Moonlight, so that my residual damage actually is more than the healing from Moonlight. The next Pokemon is Gengar, and Shackle anchors Gengar into Curse, sealing its fate. Gengar did everything on its own and it went down. Then it's time for Murkrow, which is easily countered by Lanturn, but when Lanturn was setting up the Rain Dance, it actually got crit, which is why it couldn't stay in on Doom. Dugong comes in on Doom, but Dugong also gets a crit. At this point I have to use Tauros, and Tauros takes care of Doom with a crit of its own. If Tauros didn't crit there, I would have had to risk getting crit by Doom, but overall that was the only risk in this fight. The last fight against Lance starts really badly. On turn 1, Lanturns gets hit by a critical Hyper Beam from Gyarados. It doesn't go down, but that means that after beating Gyarados, it has to immediately switch out without scouting the moveset of the next Dragonite. I switch in Shackle to scout the moveset, and it is the Thunder Dragonite. Shackle gets unlucky with Paralysis and can't 1v1 with Dragonite, so I have to bring in Sandslash, and Sandslash finishes off Dragonite. The next Pokemon that comes in is the Blizzard Dragonite, but I just switch to Dugong and Dugong one-shots it. Then there is Aerodactyl, and Tauros pretty easily takes care of that with Surf. Then it's Charizard's turn, and Rapidash loses the 1v1, so I have to come in with Dugong, and Dugong eliminates Charizard. The last Pokemon is the level 50 Dragonite, and even though it is the last Pokemon, I have to sack Rapidash because I need Dugong to stay alive and beat it with Ice Beam. So Rapidash comes in on Hyper Beam, Rapidash goes down, then Dugong comes in and finishes the fight. Bleed 4 was completed with only one Pokemon lost. And the last fight against Lance was overall not completely safe, but I only risked getting hit by even more crits, and I already got a crit on turn 1, so I can't even say I was lucky. It was slightly anticlimactic, because I can't say that this was the hardest fight in the game until now. But it's not finished. This is Silver. There is still the wall of Kanto to explore. When I arrive in Kanto, I have to face a new problem. Janine's level cap is 39. I have no idea how other Nuzlockers deal with the fact that the new level cap is lower than the older level cap, but in my case I decided that since that I was in a new region, I could just change my team. I decided to use a Raior to survive the Poison Gym's explosions. Then I added both of my shiny Pokémons to my team, Stario and Tentacool, and water types are always pretty good. And then, since Kanto is pretty much an open region, I decided to come up with a route to ensure three different encounters that I really wanted. My encounter routing was not too hard, but I couldn't catch those Pokémons when I arrived in Kanto because it was day, and my encounter routing had some encounters that only happened at night. So I started working on leveling up my Pokemon, and there I encountered a different problem. How do I level up my Pokemon in Kanto? Wild Pokemon are really low leveled. I could farm against level 15 Pokemons or something like that, but man, that will take all day. I have no idea why the developers decided to give the Kanto Pokemon such low levels, like there are level 5 roots, but I suppose it was some weird let's reenact Generation 1 mentality. The other option was to beat some trainers, but that was also impossible because look at my level. I did have a level 36 Pokemon, but it had two different quadruple weaknesses, and then I had two level 20 something Pokemon which just didn't cut it in Kanto. I decided to try and challenge some trainers. I had good luck for the first couple of encounters, but then I met a trainer with a Primeape and a Poliwrath that I couldn't do anything about. I lost my Beedrill, I lost my Spearow, I lost Krabby, and then I also lost Rhyhorn. While every Pokemon is a big loss, Rhyhorn was critical. Rhyhorn was my only leveled Pokemon, and after losing him, the highest level Pokemon I had was level 25. This made it absolutely impossible to challenge the Kanto trainers. I was now faced with two new problems. The first one was the death of Spearow. Spearow was the last Pokemon I had that could learn Fly. There were two Pokemon that were pretty easy to catch, and one of them was even included in my routing for the Pokemon I needed, and they learned Fly. These were Markrow and Hoothoot. The problem was that they both spawn at night, and right now it was day. To catch them, I would have to interrupt the stream, wait, and then start a stream at night. After thinking for a while, I decided that it was acceptable for me to not use Spearow anymore in battle, but still add Spearow to my team and use Fly. Not having Fly would be completely clipping the run, and at the same time, it was something that I could have. It was just that it would completely mess up my streaming schedule. The other problem was that I was effectively locked in Kanto. There are four different ways to go back from Kanto to Yoto. The first way is to use the teleport guy in Indigo Plateau, but this guy disappears after you beat the Elite Four, so that wasn't viable. The second way is to use the ship, but it wasn't the correct way. The third way is to use the train, but to use the train you have to solve the machine part problem, and to do that you have to reach the power plant, and to do that you have to beat trainers, which I couldn't do. The last way is to go by foot by traversing Victory Road, but my Pokemon were so low leveled that one, I couldn't repel all Pokemon in Victory Road with a repel, and two, they weren't even fast enough to escape those Pokemon. It looked like my only choice was to level up with a low level wild Pokemon in Kanto, but I refused to do something so tiring. I did a very weird and very risky leveling up by staying really close to the entrance of Victory Road and finding the Gravelers to beat with Surf and escaping from Donphans and escaping from one Golbat and then going back to heal because I wasn't fast enough to escape from Golbats, and I usually managed to get a couple of hits in before I managed to escape. It was incredibly risky for what is just leveling up with wild Pokemon, but it worked. I managed to level up my Pokemon enough that I could reliably escape from Golbats, and then I just started farming Victory Road. From this point on, I won't list the Pokemon I catch anymore, unless they are the ones that I rooted for and that I intended to use. And that's because I was so tired of farming that I didn't have the strength to farm to level up any new Pokemon that I will catch from now on. Whenever I lose a Pokemon, it will just stay that way. I will have one less Pokemon. I already decided that I would only have 5 Pokemon in my team. Ryan was dead. I will not get a 6th Pokemon up to the correct level. I will just make do with 5 Pokemon. After getting my Staryu and my Tentacruel to a decent level, I went to get the Waterstone and evolved my Staryu into Starmie. And at this point, I went for Graduate Route to catch the Pokemon I wanted to get. I got my Endour, I got my Magnemite, and I got my Hoppip. At that point, I got started with the gyms. First, Starmie one-shot every single Pokemon in Janine's team with Psychic. Then, Starmie went on to solo Brock, but this time at least Brock managed to land one attack. And Houndoom got competitive, I guess, because he proceeded to solo Erika with Flamethrower. And Bellossom actually managed to survive a Flamethrower, so he didn't really one-shot everything, but he didn't do anything back, so still a perfect flawless victory. I moved on to Sabrina and Houndoom once again soloed Sabrina. Then I beat the rival on Mount Moon, and I have to say that this guy is getting kind of beautiful with the moves on that Typhlosion. And then it was time for Blaine. Yes, I know that I'm not going in level cap order, but since I didn't beat Surge, I'm still considering 46 my level cap. I'm just doing things in this order because Sabrina and Blaine actually looked easier for my team than Surge, and I just thought that some extra experience was nice and I don't want to farm with wild Pokemon. My considerations proved right, because Starmie once again soloed Blaine, and this time Starmie one-shot everything again. Next was Misty, and their team was slightly better. At least her Quagsire forced my Magneton to switch out, and then her Lapras forced my Jumpluff to switch out, but she still went down pretty easily. Next, Surge. And Surge did prove to be a treat, more or less. He looked really dangerous on paper, but my own Doom worked quite well, and it was a pretty easy fight. But I have to admit that I did risk a couple of crits. Even though there wasn't really a way to not risk a crit on that Electabuzz, because his Thunder threatened every single mon on my team, and my ground type that was supposed to counter Surge completely died a long time ago. After Surge, I had to farm to beat Blue, and I farmed in a way that was not the Nuzlocke way. I just went to the Elite Four and beat them repeatedly. I didn't bring a good team. I brought various teams with mixed Pokemon to have some fun and try some new stuff. I did this off stream. My Pokemon died a few times. I decided that this didn't count towards the Nuzlocke, because farming safely in Victory Road would have been so incredibly boring that I mentally couldn't do it. I consider this fine because obviously I could safely level up my Pokemon. This wasn't even a matter of patience anymore, it was a matter of sanity. I don't want to spend 10 hours leveling up my Pokemon against wild Pokemon. It is incredibly boring, and I just refuse to do it. While doing the league repeatedly, I discovered some pretty cool things, like Jumpluff and Shackle more or less fulfill the same role, which is solving holes in your team. If there is something that you aren't sure that you can beat, or your answer to that is already too weakened, you can just send them in and they will cook up something. But you should never bring both of them to the league on the same team, because at that point, the rest of your team is just not enough to handle everything. It was quite fun, and it was quite different from playing Venado. It was refreshing. While I was doing that, at some point, the rivals suddenly challenged me, and at the start, I was a bit scared because the rival is a new fight. It's not 8-4, so if something died against the rival, it would be permanently dead. and my team at that point was pretty random, and I wasn't really prepared for a specific fight, but it turned out that it was too easy. My Lantern and Jumpluff just took care of the rival on their own, and I have to say, man, stop trying. Every single time it just gets easier and easier. Your Typhlosion still has that terrible moveset. Man, I'm starting to pity you. Just stop, please. After reaching a decent level, I went to beat Blue, and while the fight itself wasn't easy at all, in the sense that his team was pretty good, and it was supposed to be a pretty difficult fight, in reality it wasn't at all. Because since it was the next gym fight, and I had already finalized my red team, I knew which Pokemon I could stack safely, and I just played in a super safe way. I even played in a wasteful way. I lost some Pokemon that I could have easily saved, but I went with a sack because, oh, well, there is some fiction. I'm not 100% sure that if you wanna switch the Pokemon that comes in will survive. And I just said, okay, this dies. I didn't care. I kept safe my own Doom and my Starmie, but I needed against Red, and everything else was game for sack, so this fight was super easy. And at the last, we have the fight with Red. This battle was surprisingly uninteresting, so I will put the full fight on the screen, and in the meanwhile, I will do a few conclusive considerations. First of all, why was this battle so uninteresting? Because it is a single battle as the last battle of the game. This means that I can pretty much suck every Pokemon apart from one. So, even though I was terribly underleveled, I won really easily. After all, it's enough to start with a lead that beats the Pikachu, and then suck the Pokemon that is on the field, combine with something that beats what's on the field. When I take down an opposing Pokemon, every time I sacrifice what is on the field to get an advantage on the new Pokemon and end up winning with one new Pokemon. I actually won with more than one Pokemon alive because I had the leeway to do a few switches, but the point is, every time that the last battle of the game is a single battle against a single trainer, it becomes stupidly easy. This is why I think usually the last battle of the game should always be the Elite Four or a similar gauntlet. Overall, I had a lot of fun playing Silver. I managed to collect all the Pokeballs that France makes. I managed to explore all the maps apart from the tower with Oho and the island with Lugia. I actually did all the content apart from catching those legendaries. I also beat a ton of trainers that call you back for a rematch. I beat most of the trainers in Yoto actually. I couldn't do the ones in Kanto. I have to say it was fun, but there was way too much grinding. The fact that I had to change teams between one region and the other was self-imposed. I don't know how the other Nuzlockers do this, but if you have to switch teams, there is really not enough experience around. And honestly, even if I didn't switch teams, I would have farmed a bit less, but in the end, Red is just too high leveled compared to the rest of the game. And to be honest, I also found Kanto to be a bit empty, because there weren't that many trainers. As far as difficulty goes, the first part of the run was pretty hard. Falkner was pretty hard. Whitney wasn't really free. I think Morty was pretty hard, at least the Gengar. Chuck is really luck-based, but if things go wrong, it can also be really hard. And then after that, it was kind of free. The Elite Four also wasn't too hard. The Kanto gym leaders were generally easy, and usually one Pokemon with a super effective move could just sweep them. I only had a little trouble with Surge because I didn't have a ground type. Blue actually had a good team, but it was too late because at that point I only had red left and they could just stack things. Personally, I think that the reason the first few fights felt harder is because I didn't have much choice in the Pokemon I could use. Like, I didn't have any dark types for Morty or any fast ground types. And then for Chuck, the only psychic type I had available died earlier, so I don't have a psychic type in my team. Overall, the fights are not too hard, but they become hard because there isn't enough experience in the game. So you are forced to train only one team, and with 6 Pokemon, you can't really counter perfectly everything. It's a fun game. It's just a bit too much farming. I spent way too many hours farming. If you want to play this, the problem is that I don't even know if I should suggest just play it with candies, because if you play it with candies, it probably becomes too easy, because you can just use a wide variety of Pokemon, and that makes the game completely trivial. I think a good compromise could be to play with something like 20 rare candies at the start, but you have to use throughout the game. I recently tried something similar with a friend on Yellow, and the result was pretty fun. So maybe, yeah, a limited number of rare candies could make this game a bit little more fun. Anyway, if you watched until here, thank you a lot. I hope you liked this video, and next I think I'll stream Emerald in the new year. Bye!